Before we dive into this emotional journey, if you're enjoying stories that touch your heart and make you reflect, consider subscribing to this channel. Each week, we bring you narratives that resonate with real human experiences. Now, let's begin our story. 32-year-old Taylor Matthews stood on the sidewalk, staring at the modest two-story house where she had grown up. 3 years had passed since she'd walked away from this place, from the family that had never seen her true worth. The November wind whipped through her designer coat, a small indulgence she'd allowed herself after her last promotion, as maple leaves danced around her ankle boots. She checked her reflection in her car window one last time. Hair perfectly styled, makeup subtle but flawless, outfit casual yet unmistakably expensive. The external markers of her success were evident, though part of her wondered why she cared so much about displaying them. Perhaps because, for once, she wanted her family to look at her, really look at her, and see someone worthy of respect. Chicago had been good to her. In 3 years, she had climbed from mid-level marketing coordinator to director at Lexington Brands, a Fortune 500 company known for its innovative approach. Her salary had just crossed into 6 figures, and her downtown apartment overlooked Lake Michigan. She had friends who valued her opinions, colleagues who respected her judgment, and a boss who fought to keep her when competitors came calling. Yet, here she was, heart-hammering like she was 22 again, seeking approval she'd never received. Her phone buzzed with a text from Sandra, her older sister. "Are you going to stand out there all day? Mom's getting anxious." Of course, Sandra had been watching. Taylor took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and walked up the cracked concrete path to the front door, carrying her overnight bag and a bottle of expensive wine. She hadn't even needed to knock. "Finally!" Martha Matthews exclaimed, pulling the door open wide. "We thought you might have changed your mind." Taylor stepped into the familiar scent of cinnamon and sage that always permeated the house during Thanksgiving week. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was worse than I expected." Her mother's critical gaze swept over her, lingering on her designer boots. "My goodness, look at you! All fancy city girl now." Before Taylor could respond, her sister Beverly appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. At 29, Bev had always been the peacemaker of the family. "Hey, Tay!" She embraced Taylor warmly. "You look amazing." "Thanks, Bev. You too." "Oh, this old thing?" Beverly laughed, gesturing to her simple sweater and jeans. "Some of us don't need to dress up for family." And there it was, the first subtle jab, wrapped in the guise of a compliment. Taylor's smile tightened as she moved further into the living room, where her brother Ronald sprawled on the couch, eyes glued to a football game. "Hey, Ron," she said. He barely glanced up. "Hey." At 26, Ronald had never left home, working sporadically at whatever job could fund his gaming habit while living rent-free under their mother's roof. Sandra emerged from the kitchen, ever the eldest at 35, carrying authority like a banner. Well, the prodigal daughter returns." Taylor bit back a retort. "Good to see you too, Sandra." She placed the wine bottle on the side table, but Martha immediately picked it up, examining the label with raised eyebrows. "Goodness, Taylor, how much did this cost? We're perfectly happy with our usual brands, you know." "It's a gift, Mom. I thought we could enjoy it with dinner." Martha pursed her lips. "Well, I suppose we can open it, though I don't know if it'll go with the turkey." Taylor closed her eyes briefly. She had been in the house less than 5 minutes, and already she felt the familiar weight pressing down on her chest. She wondered, not for the first time, what had possessed her to accept this Thanksgiving invitation after 3 years of carefully orchestrated distance. But she knew why. Success was meaningless if you had no one to share it with. And despite everything, these people were her family. Little did she know, this Thanksgiving would change everything. Not just for her, but for all of them. The kitchen bustled with pre-Thanksgiving preparations. Martha directed the cooking operations with military precision, assigning tasks that somehow always aligned with her perception of each daughter's capabilities. "Sandra, you're in charge of the stuffing. Beverly, you handle the casserole and pies. Taylor, you can peel the potatoes." Taylor paused in the midst of unpacking her overnight bag. "Actually, Mom, I've learned some amazing recipes in Chicago. I could make my cranberry chutney. It's got orange zest and a hint of bourbon." My friends always request it. Martha waved her hand dismissively. We always use the canned cranberry sauce. Everyone likes it that way. We've never had anything different, Sandra added, measuring bread cubes with practiced efficiency. Taylor bit her tongue. Peeling potatoes it is, then. As she took her place at the counter, Taylor noticed that the kitchen had been updated since her last visit. New countertops, a modern refrigerator, and what looked like recently installed cabinets. The kitchen looks great, Mom. When did you renovate? Martha beamed, running her hand lovingly over the granite countertop. About a year ago. It was time for an update. Taylor nodded, curious about how they had afforded such an extensive renovation. Her mother had worked as a school secretary until retirement. Sandra was a teacher. Beverly worked part-time at a local boutique. And Ronald's employment status was always in flux. It must have been expensive, Taylor remarked casually, slicing into a potato. We manage, Martha replied cryptically. The Lord provides. The Lord, in this case, seemed to be providing rather generously. Taylor had set up automated payments to help her family after she landed her first big promotion in Chicago. She knew her mother's pension wasn't enough to cover the rent, utilities, and Ronald's seemingly endless needs. But she had never mentioned the payments, hoping her family would recognize her success and her contributions without her having to point them out. That evening, they gathered in the living room, Martha insisting on hearing about Beverly's tentative relationship with a local accountant, while Sandra showed photos of her two children's school activities. Ronald occasionally looked up from his phone to comment on whatever topic required the least investment of attention. When Taylor attempted to share news of her recent promotion, Martha cut her off mid-sentence. That's nice, dear. Oh, Sandra, tell Taylor about Mikey's science fair project. He won first place. Taylor's heart sank as the conversation shifted yet again. Her professional achievements, things that would be celebrated enthusiastically in any other family, were treated as mildly interesting footnotes, barely worth acknowledgement. Later, as Taylor helped Beverly set the table for an evening snack, she noticed something odd. Bev, we're one chair short. Beverly looked uncomfortable. Oh, Mom said you wouldn't mind taking the kitchen stool. We had to get rid of one of the dining chairs when it broke, and we haven't replaced it yet. Taylor stared at her sister, then at the table where 5 chairs surrounded the rectangular surface. One for Martha, one for Sandra, one each for Sandra's children who would arrive tomorrow, and one for Beverly. Ronald always ate in front of the TV, and apparently Taylor was assigned the wobbly kitchen stool. I see, she said quietly, the symbolism not lost on her. Even here, in the physical arrangement of furniture, she was the afterthought, the one who didn't quite belong. That night, lying in her childhood bed, Taylor stared at the ceiling, wondering if returning had been a mistake. She had built a life where she was valued, respected, even admired. Why had she come back to a place where she was still the odd one out, still not quite good enough? The answer was simple and painful, because despite everything, she still hoped things could change. She still wanted her family to see her, really see her, for who she had become. Tomorrow was Thanksgiving Day. Perhaps then things would be different. Thanksgiving morning dawned bright and cold. Taylor woke early, a habit from her busy professional life that she couldn't shake even on holidays. The house was quiet as she made her way to the kitchen, hoping to enjoy a peaceful cup of coffee before the day's chaos began. To her surprise, her mother was already there, kneading dough for the dinner rolls. You're up early, Martha commented, not looking up from her work. I usually am, Taylor replied, reaching for a mug. Mind if I make some coffee? Go ahead. Though I don't have any of that fancy stuff you probably drink in Chicago. Taylor bit back a sigh. Regular coffee is fine, Mom. As the coffee brewed, filling the kitchen with its rich aroma, Taylor leaned against the counter, watching her mother's practiced movements. Need any help? She offered. Martha hesitated, then nodded toward a bowl of apples. You could peel those for the pie if you want. They worked in silence for a few minutes. The only sounds the soft thump of dough against the floured counter and the swish of Taylor's peeler against crisp apple skin. Mom, Taylor began carefully, I noticed the kitchen renovation. It looks really nice. Thank you, it was long overdue. It must have been expensive. Martha's hands stilled momentarily before resuming their rhythmic kneading. We managed. Taylor took a deep breath. The thing is, Mom, I know the house finances are tight. Sandra mentioned last year that Ron lost his job at the warehouse. He's between opportunities right now, Martha said defensively. He's applying for things. I'm sure he is, Taylor said, though she doubted it. I'm just wondering how you've been managing all the expenses. Your pension. We get by, Martha interrupted sharply. The Lord provides. Taylor decided to let it drop for now. She finished peeling the apples in silence, then sliced them into a bowl with cinnamon and sugar. As she worked, she noticed a stack of bills partially hidden beneath a cookbook on the counter. The top envelope bore the power company's logo and a red final notice stamp. A knot formed in Taylor's stomach. She had been sending money for the electric bill every month. Where had that money gone? By mid-morning, the house was fully awake. Sandra's children, 10-year-old Michael and 8-year-old Emma, raced through the rooms with the boundless energy of youth, while the adults continued preparations for the feast. Taylor found herself relegated to simple tasks, setting the table, filling water glasses, arranging the relish tray. Every time she offered to help with something more substantial, her suggestions were politely but firmly declined. I've got it under control, Sandra would say. We have a system, Beverly would explain. This is how we always do it, Martha would insist. Taylor felt increasingly invisible, her presence acknowledged, but her input unwanted. The feeling was achingly familiar. It was exactly how she had felt growing up, always the odd one out, always the one whose ideas were dismissed. When it came time to seat everyone for the Thanksgiving meal, Taylor was indeed given the kitchen stool, placed awkwardly at the corner of the table where the surface narrowed, leaving her barely enough room for her plate. Martha said grace, thanking God for family togetherness and the bounty before them. Taylor silently added her own thanks for the career that had allowed her to escape this dynamic, even as she wondered why she had willingly returned to it. The meal began pleasantly enough. The food was delicious. Her mother had always been an excellent cook, and the children's chatter provided a buffer against deeper conversations. But as the main course gave way to dessert, the focus shifted to family updates. Sandra spoke at length about her work as head of the English department at the local high school. Beverly shared news about the boutique where she worked, potentially offering her a manager position. Even Ronald had updates about a potential job at a friend's landscaping business. When the conversation finally turned to Taylor, she took a deep breath and smiled. Actually, I have some exciting news. I was promoted to marketing director last month. It's a significant step up. I'm now overseeing a team of 15 people and managing campaigns with multi-million-dollar budgets. She waited for the congratulations, the questions, the interest. Instead, there was a brief pause. That's nice, dear, Martha said, in the same tone she might use to acknowledge a child's crayon drawing. Sandra, didn't you say Michael's basketball team is going to the regional championships? And just like that, the conversation moved on. Taylor's achievement dismissed as casually as if she'd mentioned buying a new pair of shoes. Something inside her, something that had been bending for years, finally snapped. Excuse me, Taylor said, her voice cutting through Sandra's detailed description of Michael's basketball prowess. Did anyone hear what I just said? The table fell silent, all eyes turning to her in surprise. I said I was promoted to marketing director. I now manage 15 people and oversee multi-million-dollar campaigns for one of the largest companies in the country. Martha looked uncomfortable. Yes, dear, we heard you. That's very nice. Nice? Taylor repeated. Is that all you have to say? Sandra frowned. Taylor, the children are trying to eat. The children are fine, Taylor said, glancing at her niece and nephew, who were watching with wide eyes, clearly more interested in this unusual turn of events than in their pumpkin pie. I'd just like to know why my career achievements are always dismissed in this family. Nobody's dismissing anything, Beverly said placatingly. We're very happy for you. Are you? Taylor challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, on this wobbly stool instead of a proper chair, by the way, it seems like nothing I do is ever good enough for acknowledgement in this house. Ronald snorted. Here we go. Taylor thinks she's better than us because she moved to the big city. Taylor turned to her brother. That's not what this is about, Ron. This is about the fact that I've worked incredibly hard to build a successful career, and every time I try to share any part of it with my family, you all act like I'm bragging or it doesn't matter. We're not interested in materialistic achievements, Martha said stiffly. Family and community are what matter here. Is that so? Taylor countered, her frustration boiling over. Then, why did you renovate the kitchen? Why do you have a new TV? Why does Ron have the latest gaming system? The table fell silent again, a different kind of tension filling the air. How we manage our finances is none of your business, Martha finally said. Taylor laughed, the sound hollow. Actually, Mom, it is my business. Quite literally. What are you talking about? Sandra demanded. Taylor looked around the table, meeting each family member's eyes. Did you really think the Lord Provides was taking care of all your expenses these past 3 years? The rent that somehow gets paid even though it went up $300? The electric bills that keep the lights on despite Ron's gaming marathons? The internet you all use that magically stays connected? Martha's face had gone pale. Taylor, I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. I've been paying your rent, $1,200 a month. I've been covering the electric bills, around $300 monthly. I pay for the internet, $80. I send $400 for groceries. I even pay Ron's car insurance, $150 a month. The silence that followed was deafening. Ronald's mouth hung open. Beverly looked shocked. Sandra's expression had hardened into something unreadable. You... what? Martha finally managed. I set up automatic payments when I left, Taylor explained, her voice quieter now. I never mentioned it because I thought... I don't know what I thought. That maybe you'd figure it out and appreciate it? That maybe you'd see I was contributing to the family in a meaningful way? So you've been what? Secretly paying our bills to make yourself feel superior? Sandra accused. Taylor stared at her sister in disbelief. No. I've been helping my family because I care about you and because I could afford to do it. But I'm realizing now that nothing I do will ever be enough for you to see me as successful or worthy of respect. She stood up, the wobbly stool clattering behind her. I think I need some air. As she walked toward the front door, she heard her mother call after her, but she didn't stop. The cold November air hit her face as she stepped onto the porch, bringing with it a clarity she hadn't felt in years. She had been chasing approval from people who would never give it, no matter what she achieved or how much she contributed. The realization was both painful and liberating. Behind her, the door opened, and Beverly stepped out. Tay, come back inside. Let's talk about this. Taylor shook her head. There's nothing to talk about, Bev. I've spent 3 years sending money to help everyone here, and not once has anyone acknowledged it or thanked me. Meanwhile, I can't even get a real chair at the dinner table. Beverly looked genuinely confused. But why didn't you ever say anything about the money? Why should I have to? Taylor countered. Why is it that in this family, everyone's contributions are valued except mine? She didn't wait for an answer, instead walking toward her car. Where are you going? Beverly called. To a hotel, Taylor replied. I'll be back for my things tomorrow. As she drove away, Taylor made a decision. It was time to stop financing a family that couldn't see her worth. When she reached the hotel, the first thing she did was open her banking app and cancel all the automatic payments to her family's accounts. It was time for everyone to face reality. The hotel room was sterile and impersonal, but to Taylor, it felt like a sanctuary. She sat cross-legged on the bed, laptop open, answering emails from team members who, despite the holiday, were seeking her input on an upcoming campaign. Here, in this professional realm, her opinions mattered. Her expertise was valued. Her leadership was respected. Her phone had been buzzing intermittently with messages from Beverly and, surprisingly, one from Sandra. She ignored them all, needing time to process what had happened and what it meant for her relationship with her family going forward. Around 9 p.m, her phone rang. It was her mother. After a moment's hesitation, Taylor answered. Hello, Mom. Taylor. Martha's voice sounded strange, smaller somehow. Where are you? I'm at the Marriott downtown. Are you coming back? Taylor sighed. I'll come by tomorrow to get my things before I head back to Chicago. There was a long pause. I see. Another pause. Taylor, we need to talk about what you said at dinner. What part? About the money. Have you really been paying our bills all this time? Yes, Mom. For 3 years. Martha's breathing was audible through the phone. Why didn't you tell us? Would it have made a difference? Taylor asked. Would you have treated me any differently? Would I have gotten a real chair at the table? That's not fair, Taylor. The chair broke and we… Mom, please. The chair is just a symbol of a much bigger issue. I've always been the afterthought in this family, the one whose opinions don't count, the one whose achievements are dismissed. That's not true, Martha protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? When was the last time anyone asked me about my work, my life, my dreams? When was the last time anyone in this family acted like what I do matters? The silence that followed was telling. I canceled all the automatic payments tonight, Taylor continued quietly. You'll need to figure out how to cover those expenses going forward. Taylor, you can't just… I can, Mom. And I have. I've been supporting this family financially for years without a word of thanks or acknowledgement. I'm done. Martha's voice cracked. What are we supposed to do? We can't afford… That's not my problem anymore, Taylor said, though the words hurt to say. Ronald is 26. He can get a job, a real one, not just opportunities. Sandra makes a decent salary as a department head. Beverly can work full-time at the boutique. You have your pension, you'll figure it out. After she hung up, Taylor lay back on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling. She felt hollow, but also strangely light, as if she'd set down a heavy burden she'd been carrying for too long. Her phone buzzed with a text from Beverly. We need to talk. All of us. Please come back tomorrow before you leave for Chicago. Taylor closed her eyes. Part of her wanted to just drive straight back to Chicago in the morning, to return to the life she'd built where she was respected and valued. But another part, the part that had brought her home for Thanksgiving in the first place, knew she needed closure. I'll come by at 10, she texted back. The next morning, Taylor checked out of the hotel and drove back to her childhood home with a strange sense of detachment. Whatever happened in the next hour, she knew she would be returning to Chicago afterward. The only question was what kind of relationship, if any, she would maintain with her family going forward. She parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Then, with a deep breath, she walked up to the front door and knocked. It was Sandra who opened it, her usual confident demeanor subdued. Come in. We're all in the living room. Taylor followed her sister into the house, bracing herself for confrontation. Instead, she found her family seated quietly, an air of seriousness pervading the room. Even Ronald was present, without his usual electronic distractions. Martha stood as Taylor entered. Thank you for coming. Taylor nodded but didn't speak, waiting to hear what they had to say. Please, sit down. Martha gestured to an armchair, a proper, comfortable seat, not a stool or an afterthought. Taylor sat, placing her purse beside her, ready to leave if necessary. Martha clasped her hands together. After you left yesterday, we had a long family discussion. About you, about us, about everything. And? Taylor prompted when her mother paused. And we owe you an apology, Martha said, her voice trembling slightly. A significant one. Taylor sat very still, not trusting herself to speak. An apology was the last thing she had expected. Martha continued, her voice wavering but determined. When you left 3 years ago, I was hurt. I told myself you were being selfish, choosing a career over family. I didn't want to acknowledge your success because it meant admitting you had been right to leave. We all did it, Sandra added, her usual assertiveness tempered with humility. Every time you achieved something in Chicago, it felt like a judgment on our choices to stay here. So we downplayed your accomplishments, Beverly said softly. Pretended they weren't important. Ronald, looking uncomfortable, finally spoke up. And I guess I was jealous. You went out and made something of yourself, and I'm still here. Taylor looked at each family member in turn, seeing genuine regret in their expressions. And the money? She asked quietly. Martha's eyes filled with tears. I knew. Deep down, I knew it had to be coming from you. The payments started right after you left, always on the same day each month. But acknowledging it meant admitting how much we needed your help, and I was too proud. We all were, Sandra admitted. It was easier to pretend everything was fine than to admit we were struggling and that you were the one keeping us afloat. Even when you were gone, you were taking care of us, Beverly said. And we couldn't even give you a proper chair at the table. Taylor felt a tightness in her chest begin to loosen. All I ever wanted was for you to see me, really see me, to acknowledge that my choices, my path, had value too. We see you now, Martha said, reaching for Taylor's hand. We see how successful you've become, how hard you've worked, and we're proud of you, so proud. I'm sorry it took this for us to realize it. I don't expect you to keep sending money, Martha continued. That's not why we're apologizing. You were right. We all need to take responsibility for our own finances. Ronald has already applied for 3 jobs this morning. Ronald nodded sheepishly. Turns out the threat of no electricity is pretty motivating. Despite everything, Taylor found herself smiling slightly. We don't want to lose you, Beverly said. Not again. We want to be a real family, one that supports each other in all ways, not just financially. That means celebrating your successes, Sandra added, and actually listening when you talk about your work. I want my kids to know how amazing their aunt is. Taylor felt tears welling in her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll give us another chance, Martha pleaded. Not right away. We know we have a lot to prove. But eventually, Taylor took a deep breath, considering. The hurt of years couldn't be erased in a single conversation, but the sincerity in her family's apology touched something deep within her. I'd like that, she said finally. But things have to be different. Real communication, real respect. No more dismissing each other's choices or achievements. Martha nodded eagerly. Absolutely. And I want a proper chair at the table next time, Taylor added with a small smile. We'll get a whole new dining set if that's what it takes, Martha promised, a tentative smile appearing through her tears. As the conversation continued, plans were made. Monthly family video calls to stay connected. A visit from Martha to Chicago in the spring. An invitation for Taylor to attend Michael's basketball championship. Small steps toward rebuilding what had been broken. When it was time for Taylor to leave, the goodbyes were different, warmer, more genuine. Martha hugged her tightly, whispering, "Thank you for not giving up on us." As Taylor drove back toward Chicago, she reflected on the Thanksgiving weekend. It hadn't gone as she'd expected, but perhaps it had gone as it needed to. The confrontation had been painful but necessary. A lancing of an old wound that could now, finally, begin to heal properly. Her phone rang through the car's Bluetooth, and she smiled seeing Beverly's name. "Hey, Bev." "Hey, Tay. Just checking that you're on the road safely." "I am. Should be back in Chicago by dinner time." "Good." Beverly paused. "I just wanted to say again how sorry I am. And also, I'm really proud of you. Marketing director is a big deal." Taylor felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the car's heater. "Thanks, Bev. That means a lot. Drive safe, and call when you get home, okay? I want to hear more about this team you're managing." "I will," Taylor promised, knowing that this time the interest was genuine. As the highway stretched before her, Taylor felt a new sense of peace. The journey home had been difficult, but it had also been necessary. Sometimes, the hardest conversations were the ones most worth having. Sometimes, confrontation was the only path to reconciliation. And sometimes walking away was necessary before you could truly come home. If you enjoyed this story about family dynamics, forgiveness, and finding your worth, please subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt narratives. Don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us continue bringing these meaningful stories to life.